We continue to talk to those implicated in the state capture report and those exonerated. Athol Williams has been commended by the Zondo Commission for blowing the whistle on activities at Bain and Company. Williams was a former senior partner at Bain involved in a huge restructuring at SARS. He eventually left the country, saying that he feared for his life. We are now joined by state capture whistleblower and author Athol Williams. Mr. Williams, thank you for being with us, and I'm glad you've decided to join us now. May I just read out something, that WhatsApp that you sent to my colleague Bongiwe the other day when we first asked you to speak to us following the fifth and final report's release. You said, "I don't just feel let down, I have been let down. I gave up everything to pursue truth for my country, and in return I got silence and rejection. Even those who thank me and call me a hero won't raise a finger to help or offer a cent. Speak to them on your show. BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, BLSA, that's Business Leadership South Africa, the Presidency. They are all waiting for me to be killed." You can read this on air. Is this still how you feel?
Francis, the difficulty I face is that I have not had any response to my calls, my appeals for support and protection from the presidency. I've even gone to see the South African High Commission in the UK, in London, where I am, and I was told I could get no help. So I find it a strange issue in our country that we keep commending whistleblowers and saying whistleblowers are heroes and thanking whistleblowers. But the moment a whistleblower says, I need some help, I need some support, and I would love people to stand with me and speak up for me, everyone goes silent. And so that perplexes me.
So you were a former partner at Bain. Later, you spoke out about practices at Bain. So obviously, you're not going to work for Bain again. Maybe it'll be difficult to work for any consultancy, given what you know. I mean, how are you living? How are you supporting yourself? You're in the UK, right? And you actually say you still feel scared. Just tell us a bit more.
I think that's the paradox with companies in South Africa right now, Francis. Every company is saying they support whistleblowers, they act ethically, they want ethical people in their business. And yet when someone like myself and many other whistleblowers speak up and are willing to behave ethically, we are ostracized by these very people in business who are saying they want ethical people. So again, there's a lot of people speaking with forked tongues and not being sincere with their actions, and certainly not matching their words with their actions. I have approached companies. Companies are unwilling, it seems, to even engage with me. I've got, as a lot of people know, I've worked in business for over 20 years, got massive global international business experience. I've got numerous university degrees. And the fact that no company can see a role for me on their board or on the executive just seems very odd. And I think it's because companies are afraid. I think those who've got lots to hide don't want people around who they think might speak up about what's wrong in those businesses. And I think that's a tragedy, because I think companies should welcome whistleblowers onto their teams and into their businesses if they are sincere and serious about operating ethical businesses. Now, Francis, I think it's important for us to put these comments in the right context, right? We live in a society that is overrun with corruption. We all know that. We know we've got a government that has fostered this corruption. So I'm sympathetic with companies who face this environment of corruption and have to now deal with the question of how does a company operate in a corrupt environment. So I'm sympathetic with that. But I do think companies have a responsibility to begin to say, we must rise above this issue of corruption. We must rise above this unethical behavior and to begin to actually operate businesses the way it should be, honestly, with integrity.
And then, like you say, if you were a whistleblower, you would be marketable, in fact, not the opposite that you're outlining. Mr. Williams, I'm interested to know, and I think I've asked you this before, but you actually said you feared for your life. Now, for some people, it's mind-blowing that a huge global consultancy like Bain, and may be involved in dubious deals, even going as far as state capture. But it's a stretch to say you actually feel this company could go after you, could kill you. Do you believe it can go that far, that this company could be that dubious?
Francis, I never received a direct death threat. I acted for the safety of myself and my family based on warnings I received. So at the end of the second day of my testimony before the Zondo Commission, I got a call from an international whistleblower NGO that works with people like Edward Snowden in the US and have worked with whistleblowers across Africa. So these are experts who know about whistleblowing. And they said to me, based on watching my testimony, they believe my life's in danger because of what I've exposed. Now, what I understood from them was not that this danger necessarily came from Bain. In fact, I don't think Bain would go that far. What concerned them was the fact that I implicated 39 parties, including the former president, including very powerful politicians and business people in South Africa. And I had, to use that metaphor, connected the dots between all of these people. And so the concern was that this connecting of the dots between these multiple parties, is what raised the concern about my safety.
Yeah.
I then later got warnings directly from people who were in the ANC and in senior government positions. And the words were, "You are in the crosshairs." Because I wasn't just sitting quietly after testifying at the Zondo Commission. I continued coming onto stations like yours and speaking on platforms to say we need to keep getting to the bottom of who was involved in state capture.
And let's just remind people, I mean, the issue here was that the former SARS Commissioner, Tom Moyane, seemed to be groomed. Bain seemed to know that he was an incoming commissioner before he even was. And then that work of restructuring undid a lot of the good at SARS. And there seemed to be motives behind that. And of course, the person who appointed him was former President Jacob Zuma. So talking about connecting the dots, if you don't have joy with the current presidency, have you thought of any former presidents, former administrations, former politicians? And I'm asking you because Thabo Mbeki was saying today that everybody should be responsible for what happened in South Africa.
Yes, I really like former President Thabo Mbeki's comments, because he was saying everyone in South Africa needs to respond to the Zondo Commissions. Isn't something just the ANC or just the current government must respond to. It needs to be business, it needs to be all of us in our society, because in many ways, all of us allowed this to happen on our watch in many ways. I haven't approached former presidents. I guess it's an issue around what resources they've got and what influence they've got to make things happen. I'm getting to the view now that says I can never go back to that life I had before I blew the whistle. And maybe that should just be the way it is. I think our country's facing such massive challenges. I'm honored and proud to have been a part of the change I think is needed in fighting corruption. And I accept that I incur some cost for doing that. I would have preferred that our society and our country is able to minimize that cost for people like me. I think what's important now is that we can build this capacity for people who come after me. I, in fact, just had a meeting today with an organization called Whistleblower House, which I wish had existed 3 years ago when I started this process of whistleblowing. But they are now building the capacity for future whistleblowers. So some good is coming of this, Francis, in terms of us understanding the depth of state capture and corruption, understanding the roles of whistleblowers, which still today is not fully understood. Because I think people often think it's a once-off thing. You stand up, you speak, or you submit documents, and you carry on with your life. And the reality is there's retaliation, there's hostility, and it continues for months and years. I still today respond to requests for information from our authorities in South Africa and internationally who are investigating. So it's a continued process of serving your country.
I'm glad that you mentioned international people looking into this? Because the huge concern has been that companies that were involved in state capture, let's be clear, Bain has denied all culpability. There was a partner who went a little bit rogue. He went to Italy, and even the Zondo Commission said there must be other partners who knew what was going on. Stop protecting your own. But that is their response. Lord Peter Hain has been very critical of that and saying Bain is continuing to operate in countries around the world, not even blocked from doing governmental business. And that's just one of several companies that he names. Do you think anything can change that, can move the needle on how these consultants are punished, not only in terms of South Africa, but globally? And do you see yourself as part of that?
Yeah. Francis, just to add to the point you made before I answer your question, Judge Nugent described Bain's involvement at SARS as a premeditated offensive against SARS. The Zondo Commission described Bain's involvement as unlawful. So you're right, Bain can deny this all they want. The point is, 2 independent judicial commissions have described the activity as unlawful and premeditated in terms of doing harm. To your question around international pressure, I think that can be incredibly powerful. I do think the international community and the international, both political and business community have a responsibility and an opportunity to really fight corruption in Africa. I'm at conferences all the time, or in environments all the time, where international organizations talk about this scourge of corruption in Africa, yet they are often part of that scourge. And so when they encounter companies like the many companies that Lord Peter Hain mentions, so Bain included, but also some of the international banks and international law firms, I think it can be a powerful act for governments to not do business with these companies until they go and fix the damage they've caused. And that's all I've really been asking for, certainly of Bain, to make full disclosure of what they did in South Africa. Not so we can go after Bain, Francis, but so that we can know the other parties involved, because these other parties, I believe, are still involved in government and in business in South Africa. But then also that they can make reparations in our country, and then we can move on. I do think companies currently doing business with Bain have a moral responsibility to hold Bain more accountable for what they've done.
And many companies don't seem to realize that you can actually gain goodwill by coming clean and saying, we will fix this.
Yeah.
My final question to you, say you did get an audience with President Ramaphosa tomorrow. What would you say to him?
I would say 2 things, Francis. One, I'd say the best he can do in terms of response to the Zondo Commission is to resource up our law enforcement capabilities. We know the NPA is desperately short of resources. No amount of talking about commitment to justice and anti-corruption is going to mean anything unless he resources up the NPA and other organizations. So that's the one thing I would desperately want him to do as president of our country. The second thing I would desperately want him to do is to put resources behind the support of whistleblowers, especially the state capture whistleblowers whose lives have been devastated. Because right now, if any young person or any person in South Africa is thinking of becoming a whistleblower, they wouldn't. Because they're saying, I've seen what's happened to Athol and the many other whistleblowers. There's no way I'm doing that. And we need whistleblowers in order to fight corruption. So back the NPA, Mr. President, back whistleblowers, Mr. President, and we then put ourselves on a fair fight to actually overcome this corruption scourge.
All right, thank you very much for speaking to us tonight. That was state capture whistleblower and author Athol Williams.